Now, one of Saul's servants was there that day, detained before the Lord. He was Doeg the Edomite, Saul's head shepherd. David asked Ahimelech, "Don't you have a spear or a sword here?" "I haven't brought my sword or any other weapon because the king's business was urgent." The priest replied, "The sword of Goliath the Philistine, whom you killed in the valley of Elah, is here. It is wrapped in a cloth behind the ephod. If you want it, take it. There is no sword here but that one." David said, "There is none like it. Give it to me." So, as you can see, David had killed Goliath, and so they were holding even the sword as something that they placed it in a holy temple because they believed that David showed a lot of faith and that this was to be recognized, something to recognize the battle. And so even though David only used a sling and a stone, they took Goliath's sword and as a representation of the battle. Let's continue to read. David at Gath. That day David fled from Saul and went to Achish, king of Gath. But the servants of Achish said to him, "Isn't this David, the king of the land? Isn't he the one they sing about in their dances?" So Achish, king of Gath, is there, and his people are thinking that David's already the king or the leader of Israel. Saul has slain his thousands, and David his tens of thousands. That was notated in the previous Bible study. That was one of the things that was causing Saul to be extremely jealous of David because Saul had some victories. And then here comes David, someone who doesn't look the part of a leader, doesn't physically look like someone of stereotypical type, tall, big, anything that you can think of in your mind as to someone who stands out and looks like they could be in charge. Whereas David was just a normal person, basically. And so Saul was angry. He was jealous of the fact that David was getting recognition more than himself. And he also noticed that everything that David was doing was turning out to be really good. So Saul unfortunately had his own stumbling blocks in his way. And so here comes Achish, and he recognizes who David is, and he's wondering what's going on. Why isn't David around Saul? What's going on? And so let's continue to read. David took these words to heart and was very much afraid of Achish, king of Gath. So he pretended to be insane in their presence. And while he was in their hands, he acted like a madman, making marks on the doors of the gate and letting saliva run down his beard. Achish said to his servants, "Look at the man. He is insane. Why bring him to me? Am I so short of madmen that you have to bring this fellow here to carry on like this in front of me? Must this man come into my house?" And so David, because he didn't want to be recognized or treated like, hey, let's contact Saul and let him know that David's here, he acted insane because he knew that would put people off and kind of not want to have anything to do with them. Could you imagine being back then? And I mean, this is what David decided to do. He was fearful. He was like, oh my gosh, Achish is going to tell Saul that I'm here. I need to act fast. I need to think of something to distract. And so he started acting really insane and crazy, letting saliva run down his beard and marking on stuff. First of all, like, And could you imagine, like, if it was your place, your palace or something, and somebody come in and you're like, oh, that's so and so, and then they start acting completely because you don't really know them, but you've heard of them or you may have seen them once or twice, and then they start acting completely insane. How would you feel? And they start marking on your walls and such. that's that's pretty funny. And so, but and at the same time, it's something to think about. Like for him, that's what he thought about. He was trying to act fast, and this is what he thought immediately. And so it worked. It made Ashish think that he was crazy, that David was crazy. What kind of thoughts or feelings come to your mind? How does it make you feel, and what does it make you think?